He doesn't belong here. Look at him." The voice cracked with entitlement, echoing through the first-class cabin. Jessica Vane, a lifestyle influencer with 3 million followers, thought her platinum status gave her the power to rearrange the world, and the people in it, to fit her aesthetic. She demanded the window seat from a quiet, elderly black man simply because the lighting was better for her skincare sponsorship. She thought he was a nobody. She thought he was an easy target, but she had no idea that the man she was trying to humiliate wasn't just a passenger. He was the reason the plane was in the sky at all. By the time they landed, Jessica wouldn't just lose her seat, she would lose everything. This is the story of how arrogance met its match at 30,000 feet. The air in the exclusive Diamond Sky Lounge at JFK Airport smelled of espresso, expensive leather, and that specific, sterile chill that only exists in places designed for the ultra-wealthy. Weston Desmond sat in the corner, far away from the buffet and the bar. At 68, Weston had the kind of stillness that younger people often mistook for lethargy. He was wearing a charcoal wool cardigan that had seen better days, a simple white t-shirt, and loose-fitting trousers. On his feet were orthopedic walking shoes. To the untrained eye, he looked like a grandfather who had perhaps won a lottery ticket, or was being flown out by a wealthy relative for a reunion. He sipped his chamomile tea, his eyes moving slowly over the pages of a paperback novel about naval history. He preferred the quiet, but quiet was a luxury he was about to lose. The glass doors of the lounge slid open with a dramatic whoosh, and a whirlwind of blonde hair, designer luggage, and high-pitched chatter swept in. "Okay, guys, so we are literally at the lounge right now, and I am so exhausted," the woman said, holding her phone out at arm's length. She was speaking to the screen, not the people around her. The TSA line was a nightmare, even for priority. Can you believe they made me take off my limited edition Balenciagas? The disrespect is real. This was Jessica Vane. At 26, she was a brand in human form. Her skin was meticulously highlighted. Her outfit, a beige cashmere travel set, was perfectly coordinated with her vintage Louis Vuitton trunk, which was currently being dragged by a beleaguered-looking man in a hoodie. That was Kevin, her boyfriend and unwilling cinematographer. "Kevin, careful with the rim. You're going to scuff it," Jessica snapped, momentarily breaking character from her sweet influencer persona. She turned back to the phone, smiling instantly. "Anyway, we're heading to London for Fashion Week, and I have a huge surprise for you guys regarding the seating arrangement. Stay tuned." She lowered the phone and sighed loudly, scanning the room. The lounge was fairly full. Businessmen in suits typed furiously on laptops. A family of 4 was quietly eating breakfast. Jessica's eyes, sharp and predatory, landed on the corner. "There," she pointed. "That spot has the best natural light. The window faces the tarmac." Kevin looked at the corner. "Babe, someone is sitting there." "So?" Jessica adjusted her sunglasses on her head. "He's just reading. We need to film the pre-flight glow segment for the partnership with Luster Skin. I can't do it in this fluorescent lighting. I'll look green." Weston didn't look up as the pair approached. He was deep in the Battle of Trafalgar, enjoying the silence of his mind. "Excuse me." A voice cut through the 1805 naval strategy. Weston lowered the book slowly. He looked up to see a phone camera pointed directly at his face, the flash on. Behind it was a woman with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hi, Jessica said, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. So, sorry to bother you, but my team and I really need this corner. The lighting is it's crucial for my job. Would you mind moving over to those chairs near the bathroom? They're just as comfy. Weston blinked. He looked at the empty chairs near the restrooms. They were in the dark, near the swinging kitchen doors. He looked back at Jessica. I'm quite comfortable here, thank you, Weston said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. He lifted his book again. Jessica's smile twitched. She wasn't used to hearing no. In her world, people moved when she asked. Bartenders gave her free drinks, hotels upgraded her suites, followers sent her gifts. Maybe you didn't hear me, she said, stepping closer, invading his personal space. I'm Jessica Vane. I'm vlogging for Luster Skin. It's a pretty big deal. If you move, I can tag you? Or shout you out? Weston chuckled softly, a dry sound. I'm afraid I don't know what a shout-out would do for me, miss. But I do know I'm finishing this chapter. Please find another seat. Kevin tugged on Jessica's sleeve. Jess, let's just sit by the window over there. It's fine. It's not fine, Kevin, she hissed, turning off her camera recording. Her face hardened. She leaned down, bringing her face close to Weston's. Look, old man, I'm trying to be nice. You look like you're grateful to be here. Maybe a staff ticket? Stand by? Don't make this awkward. Just move. Weston closed his book. He looked at her, his eyes dark and unreadable. He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed. I paid for my ticket same as you, Weston said calmly, and I'm staying right here. Jessica huffed, spinning around. Unbelievable. The entitlement of some people. She stormed off to a suboptimal seat, loudly complaining to Kevin about the rude boomer ruining her content schedule. Weston watched her go. He took a sip of his tea. He reached into his pocket and touched the worn leather of his wallet, inside of which sat a business card he hadn't handed out in years. Not yet, he thought. Let's see how far she takes this. The boarding process for flight RH402 to London. Heathrow was chaotic, mostly because Jessica insisted on filming her walk down the jet bridge 3 times to get the perfect strut. When the first-class passengers were finally settled, the cabin was a sanctuary of luxury. The seats were individual pods with sliding doors, lie-flat beds, and massive 4K screens. It was the flagship aircraft of Royal Horizon Air, a Boeing 787-10, outfitted with the new celestial interior. Jessica and Kevin were in seats 2A and 2B. They were excellent seats. But as Jessica settled in, sipping her pre-flight champagne, she noticed something that made her blood boil. Directly in front of her, in seat 1A, the most coveted seat on the plane, the one with the extra legroom and the panoramic dual-window view, sat the old man from the lounge, Weston. He was settling in, placing his worn cardigan on the hanger. He looked small in the massive leather chair. Jessica unbuckled her seatbelt before the fasten seatbelt sign was even off. "Kevin," she whispered furiously. "He's in 1A. That's the seat I wanted. I specifically requested an upgrade to the front row at the gate, and the agent told me it was blocked for a VIP. He is the VIP. Kevin was busy trying to fit 3 camera bags into the overhead bin. "Jess, drop it. We're in first class. It's fine." "It's not fine. Seat 1A has the golden hour light during the sunrise over the Atlantic. I have the Wake Up With Me live stream scheduled for 6 a.m. I need that window." She stood up. The flight attendant, a woman named Monica, with impeccable posture and a red silk scarf, was walking down the aisle offering hot towels. "Excuse me," Jessica said, stepping into the aisle and blocking Monica's path. "There's been a mistake." Monica smiled professionally. "Let me see your boarding pass, Ms. Vane. 2A? You are in the correct seat." "No, I mean with him," Jessica pointed, a perfectly manicured nail at the back of Weston's head. "That man. In 1A, I requested that seat. The gate agent said a VIP had it. Clearly there's a glitch in your system because that man is... Well, look at him." Weston heard them. The cabin was quiet. The engines were just a low hum. He didn't turn around. He simply adjusted his reading light. Monica's smile stiffened slightly. "Mr. Desmond is in his assigned seat, Miss Vane. Please take your seat so we can prepare for pushback." Jessica wasn't having it. She pulled out her phone. She hit leave on Instagram. Within seconds, the viewer count ticked up. 400, 1,200, 5,000. "Hey guys," she whispered loudly to the phone, holding it up so the viewers could see the back of Weston's head. "So, drama alert. I'm on the flight to London, ready to bring you the best content. But the airline has totally messed up. They gave the Prime Creator Suite, Seat 1A, to this random guy who is being super rude. He refused to swap with me in the lounge, and now he's hogging the best light. I feel so unsafe when people are this aggressive." She walked forward, tapping Weston on the shoulder. Weston turned. He looked at the phone lens, then at Jessica. "You again," he said. "Sir," Jessica said, her voice shaking with manufactured emotion for her audience. "I'm asking you one last time. I have a job to do. I have 3 million people waiting for my content. You are just... sleeping. Can we please switch? I'll even buy you a drink." "I don't drink alcohol," Weston said. "And I chose this seat for a reason, young lady. My wife and I used to sit in 1A and 1B. She passed away 3 years ago. I sit here to feel close to her." It was a lie, or at least a partial one. Weston had a wife, and she had passed. But his reasons for sitting in 1A were far more complex. But he wanted to see if she had a shred of humanity. The comment section on Jessica's live stream exploded. At Jess Queen, "Or sad story, but he should still move." At Brad Chad, "Boomer logic. Move over, Grandpa. Jess needs the light." At Real Talk, "Jess, leave him alone." Jessica glanced at the comments, filtering out the negative ones. "Look, that's sad and all, but my job is on the line. I'm representing Lusterskin. Do you know how much this campaign is worth? More than your retirement fund." The cabin went silent. A businessman in 3A lowered his noise-cancelling headphones. Weston's face changed. The sadness evaporated, replaced by a steel-hard resolve. He unbuckled his seatbelt and stood up. He was taller than he looked while sitting. "Money," Weston said, his voice carrying through the first-class cabin without him shouting. "You think money is what gives you the right to displace people? You think your follower count makes you more valuable than the human being sitting next to you?" "I think I'm more relevant," Jessica scoffed. "Let's be real. Who are you? Nobody knows you. Everyone knows me." Ms. Vane, Monica, the flight attendant, stepped in firmly, putting a hand between them. "Sit down immediately. You are disturbing the other passengers. If you continue, I will have to notify the captain." Jessica laughed, a harsh, incredulous sound. "Notify the captain? Go ahead. Tell him Jessica Vane is unhappy. I have a Platinum Sky Alliance card. I practically pay your salary. In fact, tell the captain I want this man moved to economy. He's making me uncomfortable with his aggression." Weston looked at Monica. He saw the panic in her eyes. She was terrified of a bad review, terrified of a viral video that could get her fired by corporate. "It's okay, Monica," Weston said gently to the flight attendant. "Let her call the captain." He turned his gaze back to Jessica. "In fact," Weston said, a small, dangerous smile playing on his lips, "I insist. Call the captain. Tell him Weston Desmond is in 1A, and the woman in 2A would like to have him removed." Jessica smirked at her phone. "You hear that, guys? He's challenging me. Watch this." She looked at Monica. "Go get him. Let's settle this." Monica looked at Weston. Weston gave her a subtle nod, confused but obeying the strange authority this quiet man radiated. Monica headed for the cockpit. Jessica sat on the armrest of Weston's seat, posing for her live stream. "Winning," she whispered. She had no idea that the man named Captain Anderson, who was currently piloting the aircraft, had served under Weston Desmond for 15 years. She had no idea that she had just pulled the pin on a grenade that was sitting in her own lap. The silence in the first-class cabin was heavy, the kind of thick, suffocating quiet that precedes a thunderstorm. Jessica Vane was oblivious to it. She was too busy curating the thumbnail for her live stream. She selected a frame where her mouth was open in feigned shock and typed the caption, "Attacked in first class. Airline does nothing. #nightmare. #Royal Horizon." "He's coming," Kevin whispered, nudging her. The cockpit door opened. Captain Robert Anderson stepped out. He was a man who looked exactly like what you wanted a pilot to look like. Broad-shouldered, silver-haired, with 4 gold stripes on his epaulets that gleamed under the cabin lights. He carried his hat under his arm. His face was stern. He had been briefed by Monica that a platinum passenger was causing a disturbance and demanding the removal of a man in 1A. Jessica straightened up, fixing her hair. She pointed her phone at the captain. "Finally! Captain, thank God! This man—" She gestured dismissively at Weston, who was staring out the window at the ground crew. "Is refusing to cooperate. He's been aggressive. He's made me feel unsafe, and quite frankly, he doesn't look like he belongs in this cabin. I want him moved. Now." Captain Anderson didn't look at the phone. He looked at Jessica. His eyes were cold blue steel. "Ms. Vane," the captain said, his voice deep and authoritative. "Flight attendants are federal officers in the air. Disobeying them or interfering with their duties is a federal offense. You were asked to sit down." Jessica blinked. This wasn't the script. "Excuse me? Do you know who I am? I have 3 million followers. I am a platinum member. I am the victim here. That man is the aggressor." "That man," the captain repeated, his gaze finally shifting to seat 1A. Weston slowly swiveled his chair around. He looked up at Captain Anderson. He didn't say a word. He just raised one eyebrow slightly and clasped his hands over his stomach. Captain Anderson's eyes widened. The color drained from his face, replaced instantly by a flush of adrenaline. His posture, already straight, snapped into a rigid military brace. He ignored Jessica completely. He stepped past her legs, almost tripping over her Louis Vuitton bag, and stood directly in front of Weston. To the shock of the entire cabin, the captain didn't scold the old man. "Sir," Captain Anderson said, his voice trembling with a mixture of reverence and disbelief. I I wasn't informed you were on the manifest. My apologies, sir. The system just listed a VIP block. If I had known... Jessica's jaw dropped. She lowered her phone slightly. What? Sir? Why are you calling him sir? Weston smiled, a warm, genuine smile that reached his eyes for the first time. At ease, Robert. It's been a long time. You were a first officer last time I saw you. On the DC-10s, wasn't it? Yes, sir. 1998. The Cairo run, Anderson replied, still standing at attention. Sir, is this passenger bothering you? I can have the gate agents remove her immediately. We can delay pushback. It would be my pleasure. The atmosphere in the cabin shifted violently. The businessman in 3A took off his headphones entirely. The flight attendants were exchanging bewildered glances. Jessica Vane looked like she had been slapped. "Remove me!" Jessica shrieked, her voice cracking. "Are you insane? You're going to kick me off for him? He's clearly just some retired pilot buddy of yours. This is nepotism. I'm recording this. I'll have your badge." Captain Anderson turned to her, his face darkening with fury. "Miss Vane, you are speaking to—" Weston held up a hand. "Robert." The single word stopped the captain instantly. Weston's voice was soft, but it carried an undeniable weight. "Don't," Weston said. "We have a schedule to keep. There are 300 people on this plane who need to get to London. Families, business people. I won't have their flight delayed because of a child's temper tantrum." Weston looked at Jessica, his eyes hard. "Let her stay. Let her record. But Robert, if she speaks to me one more time, or if she leaves her seat once the light is on, then you can have the authorities meet us at Heathrow." Captain Anderson nodded sharply. "Understood, sir." "Thank you, sir." He turned to Jessica, his voice dropping to a growl. "You heard the gentleman. Sit down, strap in. And if I hear one more peep out of you, I will divert this plane to Newfoundland and leave you there. That is not a threat, Miss Vane. That is a promise." The captain turned back to Weston, gave a sharp, respectful nod, and retreated to the cockpit, closing the reinforced door behind him. The silence returned, but this time it was different. It was the silence of confusion and fear. Jessica sat down, her hands shaking. She looked at Kevin. Kevin had turned the camera off. "Who is he?" Kevin mouthed. "I don't know," Jessica whispered back, angrily buckling her belt. "Probably some old union boss, or a retired admiral. It doesn't matter. The airline is going to pay for this. They treated me like garbage." She glared at the back of Weston's head. She didn't feel shame. She felt victimized. Her narcissism wouldn't allow her to see the reality. She pulled out her phone and started typing a furious text to her manager in LA. "Get the legal team ready. I'm about to destroy Royal Horizon Air." As the plane pushed back and the safety video began to play, Weston Desmond looked out the window. He watched the tarmac slide by. He wasn't thinking about Jessica. He was thinking about the engines, specifically the fuel flow regulators on the starboard engine, which he had personally redesigned 5 years ago to improve efficiency by 4%. He hoped they were working well today. 2 hours into the flight, the cabin was dim. Most passengers were asleep or watching movies. The flight attendants had just cleared the dinner service, lobster thermidor, which Jessica had sent back because it was too rubbery. Jessica wasn't sleeping. She was editing. She was cutting the video of the captain to make it look like he had screamed at her unprovoked. She was adding filters to make herself look paler, more distressed. She was crafting a narrative of abuse. "Kevin," she hissed, "did you find anything on Weston Desmond?" Kevin was scrolling on his laptop using the pricey in-flight Wi-Fi. "It's weird, Jess. There's an Weston Desmond who is a plumber in Ohio. There's one who's a professor in Leeds. But nothing that fits this guy. No social media, no LinkedIn. It's like he doesn't exist." "He's a nobody," Jessica muttered. "Just some old crony of the pilot. That's why the captain was so deferential. It's an old boys' club. Just wait until I post this. Misogyny at 30,000 feet. It'll trend in an hour." Suddenly, the fasten seatbelt light dinged. It didn't just ding once, it dinged 3 times. The captain's voice came over the intercom, but it wasn't the smooth flight deck update voice. It was tight. "Cabin crew, please take your seats immediately. Passengers, strap in. We are hitting a patch of severe clear air turbulence. Usually, turbulence is a few bumps. This was not that. The plane dropped. It wasn't a slide. It was a hammer blow from the sky. The Boeing 787 plummeted 300 feet in 2 seconds. Jessica screamed, her phone flying out of her hand and hitting the ceiling before clattering to the floor. Glasses shattered in the galley. The businessman in 3A gasped. The plane violently rolled to the left, the engines roaring as the autopilot fought the chaotic air currents. "We're going to crash!" Jessica shrieked, clutching Kevin's arm, her fingernails digging into his skin. "Kevin, do something!" "I can't do anything," Kevin yelled back, his face white. In Seat 1A, Weston Desmond hadn't moved. He hadn't screamed. He hadn't even spilled his water. He was looking at the flight information screen, watching the altitude and the airspeed. His eyes were narrowed, calculating. He felt the vibration of the airframe through the seat. "Your damper is correcting," he thought, a little slow on the response. The hydraulic pressure might be fluctuating. The plane slammed upward this time, pinning everyone to their seats. The groaning of the composite materials was terrifyingly loud. Oh God, Jessica was sobbing now. "I'm sorry. God, I'm sorry." It was the foxhole prayer of the non-believer. Weston unbuckled his seatbelt. "Sir, sit down!" Monica, the flight attendant, shouted from her jump seat near the galley door. She was strapped in, tight, looking terrified. Weston ignored her. He stood up. The plane bucked like a wild horse, but Weston moved with the rhythm of the floor, his sea legs, or rather sky legs, keeping him upright. He held on to the overhead bins and made his way to the galley where the flight monitoring panel was. "Sir!" Monica screamed. Weston looked at the panel. He tapped a few buttons, bringing up the technical diagnostics screen, a screen passengers weren't supposed to know existed. He studied the engine pressure ratios. He pressed the intercom button near the galley phone. He didn't call the flight attendants. He dialed the cockpit code directly. Jessica watched through her tears. What is he doing? Is he hijacking the plane? "Anderson!" Weston spoke into the handset, his voice calm, cutting through the chaos. "It's Desmond. You're fighting the auto throttle. It's overcompensating for the updrafts. Disengage the AT on the left engine only. Keep the right on auto to maintain stability. You have a sensor lag on the left intake." There was a pause. Then the sound of the engines changed. The violent surging stopped. The plane still shook, but the terrifying roller coaster drops ceased. The nose leveled out. Weston hung up the phone. He looked at Monica, whose mouth was open. "The sensor on the number 1 engine gets sticky in cold air masses," Weston explained to her, as if discussing the weather. "Known issue with this batch of Trent 1000s. I told Rolls-Royce to fix it in the 23 update. Looks like they missed a few units." He walked back to seat 1A, timing his steps with the residual bumps, and sat down. He buckled his belt. The cabin was silent, save for the wind noise. The terror had been replaced by awe. Kevin, who had retrieved his laptop, was staring at the screen. The Wi-Fi had reconnected. "Jess," Kevin whispered, his voice trembling. "Jess, look at this." Jessica wiped her mascara-stained eyes. "What? I don't care. We almost died." "No, look." Kevin turned the laptop toward her. He had abandoned the name Western Desmond and had instead searched for Royal Horizon Air History and Boeing 787 Development Team. On the screen was a black-and-white photo from 1985. It showed a group of men standing in front of a prototype aircraft. In the center, young, handsome, and holding blueprints, was the man in seat 1A. But it was the headline of the article from Aviation Week that made Jessica's blood run cold. The Sky King. How Western Desmond built Royal Horizon from a single-crop duster to a global empire. Kevin scrolled down. Western Desmond, founder and majority shareholder of Royal Horizon Air, retired CEO, chairman emeritus, decorated naval aviator, inducted into the Aviation Hall of Fame in 2010. Net worth, estimated $4.2 billion. "He's not a passenger," Kevin whispered, horror dawning on him. "Jess, he owns the airline. He owns the plane." Jessica stared at the screen. She looked at the number of followers she had. 3.1 million. Then she looked at the net worth on the screen. 4.2 billion. She looked at the back of seat 1A. She had tried to kick the owner of the airline out of his own seat. She had insulted him. She had threatened to sue his company. He owns it," Jessica squeaked. "He designed the engine modifications," Kevin added, reading further. "He's an engineer. That's why he knew how to fix the turbulence." Jessica felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with the flight. The realization of what she had done crashed down on her, harder than the turbulence. She wasn't just in trouble. She was a flea trying to fight a lion, and the lion was currently sipping his chamomile tea, waiting for London. "We have to fix this," Jessica said, panic rising. "I have to apologize. I have to delete the video." "You already live-streamed the first part," Kevin reminded her grimly. "It's on the internet. People have seen you mock him." "Then I'll charm him," Jessica said, her survival instinct kicking in. "I'm good at this. I can spin anything. I'll go over there and apologize. I'll say it was a misunderstanding. Old men love pretty girls who apologize." She unbuckled her belt, ignoring the light that was still on. "Jess, don't!" Kevin warned. But Jessica Vane didn't know when to stop. She stood up, smoothing her skirt, and walked toward seat 1A. She was about to make her second fatal mistake of the day. Weston heard her coming. He didn't turn around. He just waited. He knew exactly who he was dealing with. And he knew that some people don't learn from karma. They have to be crushed by it. The seatbelt sign finally dinged off, signaling the end of the turbulence, but the atmosphere in the first-class cabin remained brittle. The air pressure felt heavier, charged with a silent, suffocating tension. The other passengers, a mix of high-powered CEOs, old money matriarchs, and tech moguls, were no longer sleeping or working. They were watching. They had seen the older man in seat 1A command the aircraft's engines like a conductor, taming an orchestra, and they had seen Jessica Vane scream like a child. The social hierarchy of the cabin had violently inverted. Jessica sat in seat 2A, her hands trembling as she tried to fix her makeup in a compact mirror. The reflection stared back at her. Mascara smeared, skin patchy with fear, eyes wide and desperate. She looked less like an influencer and more like a frightened girl. But Jessica Vane didn't do frightened. She did victim, and she did fixer. "Kevin," she whispered, her voice a harsh hiss. "Stop reading that article. Put the laptop away." Kevin was still staring at the screen, his face pale. He looked like he had just seen a ghost. "Jess, you don't understand. The article says he's not just the owner. It says he's known as the Iron Aviator. He fired his own son from the board of directors in 2015 for cutting safety corners. He's ruthless." "He's an old man," Jessica snapped, though her stomach twisted. "And old men have egos. I just bruised his. I can fix this. I have to fix this. If we land and he's still angry, he could sue me. But if I charm him now, if I make him feel like the big, strong protector." She unbuckled her seatbelt. She smoothed her beige cashmere skirt, pulled her top down to show just a hint more collarbone, a move that had gotten her out of speeding tickets and into VIP clubs, and practiced her smile. It was the simper, a smile that suggested submission and admiration. "Don't do it, Jess," Kevin warned, his voice low. "Just sit down and shut up. That's the best play." "Watch and learn, Kevin," she muttered. She stepped into the aisle. The carpet felt soft under her feet, but her legs felt like lead. She walked the few steps to seat 1A. Weston Desmond was no longer looking at the technical manual. He was staring out the window, watching the clouds shift from grey to a deep, bruising purple as the sun began to set over the Atlantic. He looked peaceful, a monolith of calm. Jessica cleared her throat. It was a soft, delicate sound. Weston didn't move. "Mr. Desmond," she said, pitching her voice to be sweet, breathless. "Hi, I just wanted to come over for a second." Slowly, Weston turned his head. He didn't turn his body, just his head. His eyes were grey, the colour of the stormy sea below them. They were completely devoid of warmth. "You are out of your seat," Weston said. His voice wasn't loud, but it had the timbre of a heavy door slamming shut. "I know," Jessica said, crouching down beside his suite, invading his personal space in a way that forced intimacy. She put a hand on the armrest, close to his elbow. I felt so terrible. The turbulence freaked me out, and I know I was screaming and, well, I wanted to thank you for fixing it. You were amazing." She batted her eyelashes. It was a caricature of flirtation. Weston looked at her hand on his armrest. He looked at it as if it were a cockroach. "Remove your hand," he said. Jessica froze. She pulled her hand back as if burned. "I'm just trying to be nice. Look, I started off on the wrong foot. I didn't know who you were. If I had known you were the Weston Desmond, obviously I would have shown more respect." Weston fully turned his chair now to face her. The movement was mechanical, precise. "That," Weston said, pointing a finger at her, "is exactly the problem. You respect titles. You respect bank accounts. You respect fame. You do not respect people." "I do," Jessica protested, her voice rising. "I love people. My whole brand is about connection." "Your brand is about vanity," Weston corrected her, his voice cutting through her defenses. "I heard you in the lounge. You moved that family because they were ruining your background. I heard you speak to the flight attendant. You treated Monica like a servant. You treated me like an obstacle. He leaned forward, and for the first time, Jessica saw the steel behind the grandfatherly appearance. "Do you know why I sit in seat 1A, Ms. Vane?" "Because it's the best seat," she guessed, trembling. "Because it is the first seat," Weston said. "It is the seat that sees everything. I built this airline on the principle that every passenger, whether they paid £400 or 4,000, deserves dignity. You have spent the last 4 hours trying to strip dignity away from everyone around you to feed your own ego." "I can help you," Jessica blurted out, playing her last card. "Look, I have 3 million followers. I can spin this. We can do a collab. I'll post a story saying how safe Royal Horizon is. I'll say you're a hero. It's free advertising worth millions." Weston let out a dry, mirthless laugh. It was a terrifying sound. "You think I need your help?" He gestured around the cabin. "I built this fleet when you were in diapers. My reputation is built on 50 years of safety records, not on 30-second dance videos. Your influence is a phantom, Ms. Vane. It is smoke, and the wind is changing. You can't treat me like this." Jessica's mask shattered. The sweet girl vanished, replaced by the angry, entitled bully. "I'm a paying customer. I'm a platinum member. If you are mean to me, I will ruin you. I will tell everyone you harassed me. I'll say you made inappropriate comments. Who will they believe? A cute young girl or a creepy old man?" The cabin went deadly silent. The businessman in 3A gasped. Monica, standing in the galley, covered her mouth. Weston didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He placed it on the table. The screen was black, but a small red light was pulsing at the top. "Voice memo," Weston said simply. "Recording since you walked over here." Jessica's face drained of blood. She stared at the phone. You recorded me?" "I was in naval intelligence for 20 years, Miss Vane," Weston said, picking up the phone and stopping the recording. "I know a threat when I see one." "And blackmail?" "That is a felony. Attempted extortion of a corporate officer?" "That is another felony." He tapped the screen, sending the file. "I just uploaded this to the cockpit. The captain has it. The authorities in London have it." Weston looked at her with a finality that crushed her soul. "Go back to your seat. Do not speak. Do not move. Enjoy the rest of the flight. It will likely be the last time you ever fly first class." Jessica stumbled back. Her legs gave out, and she had to grab the wall to stay upright. She looked at Weston, waiting for him to say, "Just kidding," waiting for the punchline. There was no punchline. Weston put his reading glasses back on and picked up his book. He had already dismissed her from his existence. Jessica crawled back to seat 2A. She collapsed into the leather chair, pulling her knees to her chest. "What happened?" Kevin whispered. "He recorded me," Jessica sobbed quietly, burying her face in her hands. "He has everything." Kevin closed his laptop. He didn't comfort her. He looked at her with a mixture of fear and realization. "Then we're done, Jess. We're actually done." The descent into London. Heathrow was agonizing. Usually the landing was a time of excitement, checking the view, preparing the touchdown Instagram story. Today, it felt like a funeral procession. The grey London skyline loomed through the clouds. The Thames twisted like a dark snake below them. Jessica sat rigid, staring straight ahead. She hadn't eaten the pre-arrival meal. She hadn't touched her champagne. "Ladies and gentlemen," Captain Anderson's voice came over the intercom. "We are on final approach. Cabin crew, please take your seats for landing." The wheels touched the runway with a firm thud, followed by the roar of reverse thrusters. The plane slowed, turning off the active runway and taxiing toward Terminal 5. Jessica watched the terminal building get closer. She saw the jet bridges. She saw the ground crew. And then she saw the cars. 2 police vehicles, Metropolitan Police BMW X5s, were racing across the tarmac, blue lights flashing. They weren't heading to the terminal entrance. They were heading to the gate. Their gate. "Oh, God," Jessica whimpered. "They're here. They're actually here." "Maybe it's for someone else," Kevin said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Maybe there's a drug smuggler on board." The plane came to a halt. The seatbelt sign dinged off. Immediately, the familiar sound of seatbelts clicking open filled the cabin. Passengers stood up, reaching for overhead bins. "Please remain seated," the captain's voice boomed, startling everyone. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. We have authorities boarding the aircraft. No one is to stand up." The first-class cabin froze. The businessman in 3A looked at Jessica, then quickly looked away. He knew. Everyone knew. The forward door opened. A gust of cold, damp English air swept through the cabin. 3 officers boarded. 2 were uniformed constables, large and imposing in their high-visibility jackets and tactical vests. The 3rd was a sergeant, older, with a weary, no-nonsense face. Behind them walked a man in a sharp suit, Mr. James Sterling, the station manager for Royal Horizon. They walked slowly down the aisle. The silence was absolute. They stopped at row 1. The station manager bowed his head to Weston. "Mr. Desmond, welcome home, sir. I apologize for the intrusion." Weston stood up slowly, buttoning his cardigan. "No apology needed, James. Thank you for the quick response." Weston gestured calmly toward seat 2A. "That is Miss Vane," Weston said. "And in 2B is her associate, Mr. Roach." The sergeant turned to face Jessica. He didn't look angry. He looked professional, which was somehow scarier. "Miss Jessica Vane?" the sergeant asked. Jessica couldn't speak. She nodded, tears spilling over. "I am arresting you on suspicion of interference with the performance of a crew member's duties, contrary to Article 240 of the Air Navigation Order, 2016, and for making threats to kill or cause harm under the Public Order Act." "Threats to kill?" Jessica shrieked, finding her voice. "I didn't threaten to kill anyone. That's a lie." "We have the audio recording, miss," the sergeant said calmly. "The blackmail attempt regarding Mr. Desmond's reputation, the threats to ruin him. In the context of aviation security, threatening a senior airline official is treated with the utmost severity." He pulled out a pair of handcuffs. "Please stand up and place your hands behind your back." "No!" Jessica grabbed the armrests. "You can't do this. I'm an American citizen. I have rights. Kevin, tell them. Tell them I was just joking." She turned to Kevin. Kevin Roach was standing up. He had his backpack on. He held his camera bag tight. "Kevin," Jessica pleaded. The sergeant looked at Kevin. "Mr. Roach, we have questions for you as well." Kevin looked at Jessica, then at Weston Desmond. He took a deep breath. "I have the footage," Kevin said, his voice shaking but clear. "I have everything, from the lounge to the seat dispute to the turbulence. I recorded it all. She planned it. She told me to film her harassing him for content." Jessica stared at him, her mouth open. "You traitor! You dirty little traitor! I'm not going to jail for your content, Jess, Kevin said, stepping into the aisle away from her. I'm giving the police the SD cards. Good lad, Weston murmured. The police officer moved in. He took Jessica's arm. She tried to pull away, but he was stronger. He spun her around, and the metallic click-click of the handcuffs echoed through the silent cabin. You're hurting me, Jessica screamed, trashing as she was pulled into the aisle. Do you know who I am? I have 3 million followers. I'll live-stream this. You'll all be fired. You're making it worse, miss, the sergeant said, guiding her forcefully toward the door. As she was dragged past seat 1A, she locked eyes with Weston one last time. Please, she begged, the fight suddenly draining out of her. Mr. Desmond, Weston, please just tell them to stop. I'll do anything. I'll apologize. I'll promote the airline. Please don't let me go to jail. Weston stood tall, holding his naval history book under one arm. He looked at her with a profound, heavy sadness. You had 3 chances, Miss Vane, Weston said softly. You had the lounge, you had the boarding, and you had the turbulence. Every time, you chose arrogance over kindness. He adjusted his glasses. The time for apologies has passed. Now is the time for education. He nodded to the police. Take her away. Jessica wailed, a raw, ugly sound, as she was marched out of the aircraft and down the jet bridge into the cold reality of the British legal system. Weston turned to the rest of the stunned first-class cabin. My apologies for the delay, everyone, he said, his voice warm and gracious. Please check your emails when you land. I've instructed my team to issue full refunds for your tickets today, along with a voucher for future travel. Royal Horizon values your peace of mind. The businessman in 3A started to clap. Then the woman across the aisle joined in. Soon the entire cabin was applauding, not for the free tickets, but for the justice they had just witnessed. Weston smiled, a small, weary smile. He patted Kevin on the shoulder as he passed. Come with me, son, Weston said to the cameraman. Let's get you a cup of tea, and then we'll talk about getting that footage to the BBC. Kevin nodded, wiping sweat from his forehead. Yes, sir. They walked off the plane together, leaving the empty seat 2A behind, a monument to an ego that had flown too high and crashed too hard. The holding cell at Heathrow Airport's police station was nothing like the Diamond Sky Lounge. It smelled of industrial cleaner and stale coffee. The lighting was fluorescent and unflattering, the kind that showed every pore and every crack in a person's composure. Jessica Vane sat on a hard wooden bench. Her phone had been confiscated. Her shoelaces had been removed. For the first time in 6 years, she was offline. She paced the small room, her mind racing. This is a misunderstanding. It's a content opportunity. I can spin this. I went to jail for my art. Yes, that's the angle. I'll do a Get Ready With Me, court date edition. But when the heavy metal door finally opened 3 hours later, it wasn't her lawyer. It wasn't a sympathetic fan. It was a duty solicitor named Mr. Higgins, a tired-looking man with a frayed collar. Mrs. Vane, he said, not bothering to sit down. You have been charged with behaving in a threatening, abusive, or insulting manner towards a member of the crew and interfering with the performance of a crew member's duties. These are serious offences under the UK Air Navigation Order. I'll pay the fine, Jessica said quickly. How much? 5,000? 10? Just let me go. Mr. Higgins sighed. It's not just a fine, Miss Vane. The Crown Prosecution Service is pushing for a suspended sentence, given the profile of the victim and the video evidence. What video evidence? Your cameraman, Higgins said. Mr. Kevin Roach. He provided the police with the unedited footage of the entire flight. It shows you planning the confrontation, making derogatory remarks about the passenger's age and race, and ignoring direct orders from the captain. Jessica felt the blood drain from her face. Kevin. There's more, Higgins continued. Because of the nature of the incident, harassing the owner of the airline on his own aircraft, Royal Horizon has issued a lifetime ban. Fine. I told him I'd fly Delta, Jessica snapped, trying to regain her bravado. Higgins looked at her over his spectacles. You don't understand. Mr. Desmond is the chairman of the Global Aviation Security Council. He has flagged your passport as a Level 1 disruptive passenger. Miss Vane, you have been placed on the international no-fly list. The room went silent. The hum of the ventilation system sounded like a roar. For how long? Jessica whispered. Indefinitely, Higgins said. You cannot board a commercial aircraft entering, leaving, or operating within the UK, the US, or the EU. Effective immediately. But I live in Los Angeles, Jessica screamed. How do I get home? Higgins shrugged, gathering his files. I believe the Queen Mary 2 sails from Southampton to New York once a month. It takes 7 days, or you could swim. The digital avalanche. While Jessica was sitting in a cell, the world outside was consuming her. Kevin hadn't just given the footage to the police. He had, perhaps with a nudge from Weston's media team, uploaded a director's cut to YouTube. The title was simple. The Truth About Jessica Vane. It didn't have filters. It didn't have music. It just showed the raw, ugly reality. It showed Jessica mocking Weston's clothes in the lounge. It showed her calling him a nobody. It showed her terror during the turbulence, followed immediately by her callous plot to manipulate him. It showed her screaming at Monica. The internet, which had once worshipped her, turned on her with the ferocity of a starving pack of wolves. Twitter/X, #Jessica Vane, overbecame the #1 trend worldwide within 4 hours. Instagram, her follower count was dropping by 10,000 every minute. It was a free fall. Luster Skin. They posted a public statement. Luster Skin condemns discrimination and harassment of any kind. We have terminated our contract with Ms. Vane effectively immediately and will be suing for breach of brand values. The agency, her talent agency in LA, dropped her via a tweet. They didn't even email her. When Jessica was finally released on bail the next morning, pending a court hearing, she walked out of the station expecting paparazzi. She was ready to cry on camera. There were no paparazzi, just a cold London drizzle and a single Uber driver waiting for a fare. She got her phone back and turned it on. The notifications froze the screen. Hate mail, death threats, mockery, and then the email from her bank. Alert. Your business accounts have been frozen pending litigation from Luster Skin and Royal Horizon Air. She stood on the sidewalk, shivering in her thin cashmere set. She had no ride. She had no career. She had no way to fly home. She was stranded in a foreign city with her reputation in ashes. 6 months later, the port of Southampton was grey and windy. The massive ocean liner let out a deep, mournful horn blast. Weston Desmond sat in the first-class observation deck of the ship. He wasn't sailing. He was just visiting the captain, an old friend, before the ship departed for New York. He was drinking his tea, looking down at the economy boarding ramp. "See anyone you know?" the ship's captain asked. Weston adjusted his glasses. Maybe. Down on the gangway, trudging slowly with 2 heavy suitcases, was a woman. She looked different. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, dark roots showing. She was wearing jeans and a heavy, non-designer coat. She looked tired. She looked older. It was Jessica. She had spent 6 months in London, working under the table as a hostess in a pub because her work visa had been revoked and her assets frozen. She had finally scraped enough cash together for a ticket home. Not a suite, not a cabin with a balcony. A berth, a bunk bed in the interior of the ship, shared with 3 other strangers. It would take her 7 days to cross the Atlantic. 7 days with no Wi-Fi. She couldn't afford the package. 7 days to think. As she dragged her luggage up the ramp, she stopped. She looked up at the towering ship, and for a fleeting second, her eyes locked on the first-class deck. She couldn't see Weston clearly. He was just a silhouette against the glass. But she shivered. She lowered her head and kept walking, merging into the crowd of anonymous passengers. She was nobody now, and in being nobody, she was finally starting to learn what it meant to be a person. Weston watched her disappear into the hull of the ship. Karma, the captain noted, following his gaze. She's the one from the news, right? The plain Karen? She is, Weston said. He set his tea down. Did you really have to ban her for life, Weston? The captain asked. Seems harsh. She was just a silly girl. Weston smiled, but his eyes were serious. I didn't ban her to punish her, Robert, Weston said, standing up to leave. I banned her to save her. If she had flown home the next day, she would have learned nothing. She would have spun it. She would have survived as a victim. Weston looked at the grey ocean horizon. By taking away her wings, I forced her to walk, and only when you walk do you see the people you're stepping on. Weston buttoned his coat. Come on. I have a flight to catch. I'm trying out the new one, A seat on the return leg. I hear the lighting is excellent. And that is the story of how one moment of arrogance can dismantle an entire life. Jessica Vane thought her follower count made her untouchable, but she learned the hard way that in the real world, character is the only currency that matters. She tried to move a mountain, only to realize the mountain owned the sky. It makes you think, how many times do we judge someone by their cover, ignoring the story written inside? Weston Desmond wasn't just an old man in a cardigan. He was a titan of industry. But he didn't need to shout it. True power is quiet. Insecurity is loud. So, here is my question for you guys today. Have you ever encountered a Jessica in real life? Someone who tried to pull rank on the wrong person? Or have you ever seen instant karma hit so hard it was almost scary? Let me know your stories in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story and want more tales of entitlement meeting justice, please destroy that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a flight or a video. Until next time, stay humble, stay kind, and always check who you're sitting next to. You never know who they might be.